All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Enlightened Conversations. Really excited for today and to introduce you guys to my awesome guest who's out in London, the United Kingdom, and really excited to chat with her today. I came across her Instagram page not too long ago and invited her to have a fun conversation with me. I guess I should probably say her name if we're going to have a conversation. It's Nicole Barton. She is a life mentor, speaker, and writer, and love her Instagram handle. I'll promote it already. It's going to be in the link in the description, but Well-Being Writer. It's the first thing I saw when I saw her page. I was like, that's a cool handle. And so excited to chat with her today. And so without further ado from me, I want to introduce you guys to Nicole. And Nicole, if you could share with the audience so they're more familiar with you, who you are, what you do, why you do it, all that good stuff.
Of course. God, how long we got? That's a big question.
Don't feel the need to start from age 2 or 3, just in brevity.
Yeah, well, usually kind of how I introduce myself, I guess, is explaining a little bit of my story. So I don't know whether that's worth hearing. I guess it is. It's like I help people. So I'm a life mentor, and I help people kind of find free. There's kind of different elements to what I do, but I help people kind of find freedom from whatever they're suffering with. So that can be anxiety, mental health, like creative blocks, anything literally. Because the understanding that I kind of share is something that helps whatever we're struggling with. And I purposefully kind of use the word suffering as well, because I think it's something that we all experience, but we don't necessarily want to admit to it, almost in a way. And so I kind of really, what I do is help people to tap back into the innate possibility and their own wisdom that's kind of always accessible to everybody. So yeah, the reason that I do that, I guess, is because I kind of grew up experiencing lots of different suffering, and we can talk about that if that's helpful. But it kind of led me to have certain beliefs about myself, which then kind of led me to obviously have loads of emotions about things throughout life, and I eventually then began to understand a little bit more about how the mind works, which offered me a total freedom from anything that I'd ever suffered with. So now I have a much lighter experience of life, and that's why it's important to me to kind of help people to do the same, to have the same experience, I guess.
I love it. I love where this conversation is starting off, because like you mentioned, all of us do at some point and throughout our lives suffer, and it's generally self-imposed. I won't make a statement as far as like it's always, even though I believe that to be true as well. But it just really, I love where this conversation is going, because for all of us, like, we're always in some energy, mood, frequency, vibration here and now in this moment, as you know, Nicole. Yeah. And depending on what that is going to determine the level or lack thereof of suffering. And for any of us, any time in life that we've been frustrated, worried, anxious, sad, depressed, it's nothing wrong with it. It's a part of the human experience. In those moments, we are suffering, and we can't really see the light or be the light, which I love talking about. So for you, we'll get into that more for sure. But I'm curious. I'm always curious, because sometimes I talk to people, and what I know to be true is when we first come here from non-physical, and we're these little joyous little baby beings, and just unconditional love. That's all we are, and that's all we are now. However, for most of us, we forget along the way who and what we truly are. And the reason why I do anything that I do is because I love to see the light bulb come back on.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, talk to someone where, because their parents were super, like, they were very aware, and so they just encouraged the little being all the way through, and I'm like, this is just an awesome human. Like, seems like they've just known who they truly are their whole life. That's not very common. But what was your story? Did you have the light bulb switch on for you at some point during adulthood?
Yeah.
Or how did it work?
Yeah, so I suffered for quite a while in my life. When I was 4, my dad left. It was the first day of school, which is kind of traumatic enough, because you you kind of plunge into something you don't really know. And yeah, so he walked out of the family home, and it was also the same week that my parents had been meant to pick up my adopted sister, who I'd kind of met and been expecting. So she lived in Romania, and she was coming over to kind of join our family. So that didn't happen because my dad disappeared, basically. And from then on, he kind of dipped in and out of my life. So early on, I quickly picked up the narrative that somehow I wasn't enough. And I really took that experience to mean that, really. So I kind of constantly throughout my life looked for that, and it kind of drove me to really striving hard, really striving to be more, or do more, or be more than enough. And so at the age of 10, I burnt out with chronic fatigue syndrome, which is quite a young age to get such a kind of illness. And I was unable to walk for a year, and I missed a year of school. And I was kind of wheeled around in this wheelchair, and taken to various different psychiatrist appointments, doctor's appointments. And again, it kind of reinforced that message that I needed fixing. I was somehow broken. And so for a lot of my life, I kind of lived with that narrative. And then at the age of 17, my dad, who'd kind of dipped in and out of my life, he bought me Slim Fast for my 17th birthday, which again kind of reinforced that narrative that I needed to be thinner. I still wasn't enough. And so I lived with that for a long time. And again, at the age of 23, although I had managed to kind of move through all of that, and I'd had different therapies throughout my life, like cognitive behavioral therapy and all that sort of stuff, I did manage to kind of have a successful career and worked really hard, got my master's degree, but then I burnt out again. And it was almost like that was like the lesson. It was like, no, stop now and listen. And so that's kind of what I did, although I did kind of go off in a different direction and really dive into self-help. And so I explored loads of different things. I explored aromatherapy, reflexology, Reiki, yoga, meditation, any kind of self-help tool or technique, affirmations, the whole lot. I kind of really jumped into them. And what I kind of realized as I came across something that I'd never really understood before, and never seen before, and it's called kind of the missing link. It's the 3 principles is what is the understanding is called, but I don't often dive into that because it's kind of, for me, it the explanation of it almost takes us away from what we're pointing to. So maybe we'll come back to that, but it was something different that I had never heard before, and it explained how the mind worked. And in it, I just realized that even the self-help wasn't necessarily helpful. It was seeing that actually we aren't broken in the first place. And so there was no need for me to strive anymore. So everything that I had thought my entire life just suddenly made sense. It was like, oh, I am already everything that I'm looking for. And it was just through really diving into understanding these principles. And now I kind of call it it's a process of self-rediscovery. And that's what I help people do, is like get back to who we are. Like you say, when we're children, we're born in that kind of unconditional love. That's who we are. That's us in our wisdom. And for me, it was very much seeing that. It was like, oh, this makes sense of everything. And that kind of just stopped me searching.
I love it. That's so powerful what Nicole just described. And yes, when we're little babies, like we never ask ourselves, are we enough? Like we have little chubby cheeks, a lot of us, like just extra skin everywhere. We're not comparing ourselves to other babies thinking, why is that baby's body better than, like we're just not, it's a lot of times it's not until we, start getting into like the school age, or with you had a very traumatic experience. You mentioned at 4. So I definitely understand how you went through and experienced what you experienced. And now you being super aware. And what I want to point out with what Nicole just shared is I love whenever anyone, any human being starts to seek answers, like they're open to receiving answers. She mentioned yoga and Reiki and just tons of different things. She was seeking. She wanted answers to life. So she was open to, experiencing and receiving more things. And then she discovered, which I do want to go into what the 3 principles are. But she discovered something that gave her, what I call the light bulb moment, where she remembered who and what she truly is. And whenever I ever engage in a conversation about being enough or worthiness or anything of this nature, I love to remind all of us, or anyone who's attracted to, whatever the medium is, whether it's on this podcast or anything else, is the same, even though we look different because we all have these different physical bodies, these different physical shells. The same non-physical energy is what is allowing all of our hearts to beat, our minds to work the way they work, the planets to orbit the way they orbit. That non-physical energy is really who we truly are. It's just flowing and operating through these physical shells. And so we're just different expressions of the same non-physical energy. Some may want to call that God, some may want to call that universe, love, all that is, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it. But that's what's at play with everything that we see and experience. And so when we realize that, and when we become aware of that that's who all of us are, we can stop the comparison, because instead of me comparing myself to another, non-physical, energy that is just flowing through this physical body, call it, Nicole, call it whoever you are out there, I can be really excited for you, because the same reason that you're able to create what you're able to create, or just be happy, or to be able to do whatever you're doing, if I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's a reflection of me, because the same energy is flowing through me with anything that I'm inspired to create or do as well. And so I love just reminding anyone who is attracted to anything that I'm doing that's, when we say that we're all connected, we're all one, that's what that means. We're all different waves in the same ocean, but still a part of the ocean. I use the ocean example as ocean is right there. I always use the example of, if the ocean is all that is, all that is the universe, all that is God, all this, whatever you want to call it, we're the waves. So the waves are still a part of the ocean, and there's different sizes of waves. And, you might think that the waves are separate, but, without each individual wave, there'd be no ocean. So all of us matter, and all of us, play a part here in this physical experience. So that's awesome. I love talking about that subject.
Yeah, me too. And you've really nicely summed up kind of basically the fundamentals of the message. It's like we all are connected, and when you kind of see that, you realize there isn't actually any separation. And that kind of only exists through our own creation, like you were saying. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's amazing when you see it. It's like, oh.
Yeah. It's all perceived like separation, and it's only in the moment. So I always remind people that, again, what I mentioned at the very beginning, in those moments where we're never disconnected, because we can never disconnect from who we truly are. Because once we disconnect from, are these physical bodies, if we were truly disconnected, then we just be dead, and we go back to non-physical. so that we're always connected, but we disconnect ourselves when we're in the frequencies of, what I already mentioned, like anything that feels really like heavy and like crappy, like when we're upset, angry, anxious, worried. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but in those moments, you can't see or hear or feel the answers that, Nicole was seeking for, and open to receiving, the synchronicities of life that we're excited about. In those moments of, really dark, heavy energy, we're more a match to synchronicities that we don't really like, physical illness, disease, accidents, things that happen that are like the most dramatic scenes on the movie screen. That's what we're a match to when our energy is there. So it's just great to be aware of it, so that, once we have awareness, then we can have the power of choice. And that's, Nicole, the only reason that I do these podcasts or anything, because I like to have the light bulb come on for anyone, so that now they're aware. You can't become unaware. Once you're an adult and you have this awareness, now the freedom of choice is yours. I'm not going to tell you what to choose. You won't hear me say you should or shouldn't do anything, but now, and just like the baby, now the baby, you're back to that.
And what I also love that I saw was that all of those things, those frequencies that you talk about, like that energy is always there. It's just that we can't necessarily see it when we're in that kind of mode of anxiety or whatever we're suffering with. It's just that we've lost sight of it. And that's what I really realized, was like, wow, okay. So I was never broken. I just kind of thought I was. And that's, I guess, where the three principles kind of missing link understanding comes in. It's like, yeah, that for me was, it kind of makes it more easily understandable in a way. It's like
an teasing us, or you're going to share, Nicole?
Yeah, I'll tell you what they are. We're keeping a secret. So yeah, so they use different words in the three principles community. So I'm going to explain them for me in how it makes sense. But firstly, I think the thing that it helps to understand, and this is kind of the missing link that ties everything together, is, and it's often not talked about in kind of the self-help industry, is the fact, well, it is and it isn't. It's talked about in a different way. So the first thing is that we think. So, I mean, that sounds obvious. So these are quite simple, these principles, but the fact that we think is kind of not new to us. Well, it kind of was to me, because for a long time, whilst I wasn't exploring self-help, I didn't really realize that I was thinking. But I think when we become aware of our thoughts, we suddenly see something different in that. So yeah, we think is kind of the first principle. And then the second principle is that we then have an experience of our thinking. So whenever we have a thought, that then creates a feeling. So if, for example, we are suffering with anxiety, then we can feel very anxious, and we know what that feels like, but we don't necessarily realize that it comes from our thinking. Or we might realize that, and we might try and fix and change our thinking with affirmations and things like that, which for me, I found wasn't overly helpful, because in just seeing that we think and we're having an experience of our thinking, it kind of, it, like you say, it illuminates something. It makes you aware of something that you can't then become unaware of. And you see that it's kind of made up. It's like, just because there's a thought in our head doesn't mean that it's real, yet it still creates a feeling. But we then realize that that feeling doesn't necessarily really mean a lot, because it's come from something that's made up. So in that way, it then can't really impact us in the same way that we thought it could before we saw that. And then the third principle is basically that underneath all of this thought, feeling kind of experience, and how we're experiencing life through our thought, is who we really are, which is that wisdom. And I liked what you said earlier about there being different labels for that. It's like people relate to that in their own way. But for me, I describe it as like this fundamental natural intelligence behind life that's kind of living us. So whether that, some people will relate to that in terms of spirituality and kind of the universe, or, some people will, I call it wisdom. Some people will refer to it as divinity. Some people will feel it in as love or connection. There's loads of different labels, like you said. But ultimately, it's that who we are underneath all of this human experience of our thinking and the feelings that creates. So thoughts, feelings, and experience, and then wisdom. Those are the three principles in a nutshell.
I'm so happy you brought this up. This is going to help. What I'm getting ready to share with you, the audience, is going to help so much. If you're doing something else right now, stop it. Be focused on what I'm getting ready to say, because we're going to talk about, this is my favorite thing to know. And we're going to talk about ground zero from the principles, and then first, second, and third. So ground zero is the only thoughts that we can have pop, because where do these thoughts come from? Like, let's ask that question. So let's talk about, like, when we want to listen to something on the radio, let's call it a radio frequency. Knowing that as human beings right now in science, we can measure frequency. I've been, Nicole, to events where I've had the EEG scanners on my brain showing me my energy, present moment. Like, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling super victorious, like I've seen it on the scanner. And so let's talk about like what a radio frequency is. If you want to listen to out there country music or R&B or hip hop or whatever it is, you have to turn your, these days it's normally like XM radio. You have to turn it to a specific radio frequency, and then now you're on the channel, and now that's what you hear. That's the information that comes out. Same for us as human beings. Every moment in our life, we are on some frequency. So we labeled it with words, and I don't know how to speak English. So say you're on the happy frequency, or the joyful frequency, or the excited frequency, or whatever it is. It could be any label that we give it. And that could be different for everybody. It's not like one frequency for like the happy label. I'm just saying, imagine whatever your happy frequency is, that's what you're on right now. What are your thoughts going to be? You're only going to have happy thoughts come in from the happy frequency. You're never going to have a depressed, sad thought come from the happy frequency, and vice versa. You'll never have a depressed and you'll never have a happy thought when you're on the depressed frequency or the angry frequency. You're only going to have angry thoughts. So they're always going to be a direct match to that, which means that our thoughts and the way that we feel, I love this, because now those feelings can be great indicators of what frequency am I in, if you're not aware of it. Now that you're listening to this podcast, now you are aware of it, so you can actually ask yourself, what frequency I'm in, what mood am I in, what's my energy right now? Doesn't matter what we were an hour ago, yesterday, or what will be tomorrow. Nothing to do with it. What am I right now? What's my present moment state of being? How am I being? And then if you can be okay with that, for me, if I'm at least at peace and content, like I don't demand for myself to be like blissed out all day. Not realistic for human beings. But also I don't,
Human, right?
yeah, for sure. But also I don't accept for myself being like, judgmental or critical, which was a blind spot for me at one time. I wasn't even aware that I was being critical of myself and others, which made it more challenging. But then once I started asking myself these questions and wanting to be okay with my own state of being, now for me, if I'm not at least minimum peace and content, which allows the momentum to carry me up into the frequencies that all of us really love: happy, joyful, excited, blissful, euphoric, all of these things. And it can go beyond that, words that we don't even have words to describe. Like, we don't really have words beyond like euphoria, nirvana. Like, we don't really have English words that go beyond that. But the cool thing about frequency is you can go to stations and channels way beyond that and tap into, other thoughts that flow through. So just being aware of that and letting your feelings be indicators, like, ooh, kind of feel crappy right now. Dang, like, that's why I'm thinking these thoughts. And now you have a choice. Don't make yourself wrong for it, but now you're aware of it. So now you can choose to. I always highly recommend to have things that can stop momentum or put you back at peace or ease, or enjoying life. If you have like animals around, pets, like pet your dog, like that always is like a helpful thing. If you have little kids running around, or if you see little kids out in the world, I purposely do this. I don't have kids, but anytime I see like little kids being pushed in a stroller, just look at them. They're always looking up, like super present, just looking around. I always smile at them. They always smile back at me. Like, it just immediately frequency raise. There's just things that we know what parts of life raise our frequency, whether it's putting on some music or reading a book or listening to some personal development. Like, it's such an advantage. And then last thing with Nicole, I mean, that's really the most important thing, is that's what we talked about when it comes to the worthy. Like, who we truly are is this frequency of love or wisdom. I love when I get different, because I love to flow out different names for it. So I love that you just gave me another one that I'll flow into. Intelligence, universal intelligence, all these things. So I love it. Like, that's, once I became aware of that, the ground zero is what I'll call that. And the 3 principles is like where it all starts. Then it's just like we have a choice. And once you know that you're in a frequency that you can trust, that you're excited about, then you never have to worry about, oh, am I going to say the right thing? Like, that's more of a worry. So your frequency is going to drop to worry if you think too much about that. But if you just know that you're in a good place and you just let the thoughts pop in and the words fly out and the actions fly out from there, it's always going to be awesome, because you're connected with all that is, and with wisdom, with intelligence in those moments. And those are going to be, if you have an important phone call to make that call at that time. Like, that's the way, that's when you're going to be in the flow. That's what they say, like in the zone. That's what that means.
Yeah. And just I don't know what you think about this, but for me, it was seeing that wisdom's always there, even when we're kind of in those low frequency thinking, and it's more just an indicator of what our mind's doing. So for me, it became not necessarily about having to do anything to change that, but just seeing that was what was going on. And for me, there was like a level of acceptance there. It's like, well, I've still got that wisdom within me, and eventually this will pass through. Because if we don't hold on to our thoughts, because we kind of really, we're not our thoughts, we're the observer of them. So they're kind of flowing on through all of the time. And when seeing that, I think is quite helpful, because it's like, well, if we can see our thoughts, we can't be them. So, so it's like, they can't really impact us. Because wisdom is who we are. And that for me was quite freeing, because I realized actually there wasn't really anything that I needed to do to change them, which is something that I'd heard differently, because I used to spend a lot of time trying to change my thoughts and doing affirmations and all of that sort of thing. And I used to get frustrated with it, because I would basically sit in front of the mirror being like, you are worthy, you are worthy. And I just feel like a complete failure, because I didn't believe it still. But seeing that was who I was, that was the truth underneath all of it. It didn't matter how many times I tried to say the affirmation, when I saw that the affirmation was really basically just the truth underneath all of my thinking that it wasn't. That was what kind of offered me a sense of freedom around that as well. And now if I'm in kind of if I'm in my head thinking about things that aren't so good, I know that eventually if I just leave it alone, it'll just move on through, and I'll return back to wisdom, because it's just like our thoughts just settle eventually, and we can see that blue sky beyond the thought clouds again.
I love that you said that, Nicole. I'm so appreciative of you saying this, because it's so important. Like, for you guys in the audience, like, because this is who and what we all truly are, the only thing that we have to do to return to it, because it is always there, it is who we always are. We just can't see it, hear it, and feel it when we're disconnecting ourselves with
Yeah.
whatever it is that we're thinking about, or, you know, and we're thinking about it. And it's not never the thing, it's how we're thinking about it. And the longer that we think about anything in a way that doesn't feel good, the worse and worse and worse and worse we feel. Turn on the news, you know, tonight. Don't do this. I don't watch the news. But if you turn on the news and you like are feeling crappy, watch it for another 10 minutes. You're going to feel crappier if you keep focusing on
Yeah.
it in that way. So momentum is what I'm paying attention to. But I love what Nicole said, because really is if we just stop doing whatever it is or focus. And when I gave examples of things, really what that does is just like, say you have a lot of momentum going on a subject, like you're focusing on something and the way you're focusing on it has you feeling worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like a pattern interrupt. Like you're just looking at something else.
Yeah.
Like, so if I don't have like crap momentum built around my dog, my pet, then I can stop the momentum of whatever it is that I was worried about or stressed about. So I'm like just interrupting that momentum and putting my attention
Yeah.
somewhere totally different, which allows me to return. But you could easily
Yeah.
do what Nicole said also, because as long as you just, like when she mentioned letting the thoughts just pass through, once you stop thinking those thoughts that had you feeling crappy in the first place, the way you're thinking about them, then you will be back to where you are. It's kind of like
Yeah.
one of the best analogies that I've heard from. This is an Abraham analogy, where if you just don't push the cork, like if you have a bucket of water and you have a cork in the water, and what we're doing is, and the cork just wants to float. Like that's what the cork is meant to do. But the way we're thinking about things, like we're forcing the cork down underwater,
Yeah.
underwater, underwater. And if we just let go and just get out of the way, the cork's gonna float. Like we don't have to like make the cork float. Like the cork's gonna float.
Yeah.
We're just the ones in the way. So I love that you brought that.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, because it's like, for me, I often say, because people do like practical things to do, and like you say, you're kind of interrupting that by focusing on something. For me, that's like the advice I would give is it for somebody who was kind of part of one of my self-rediscovery programs. It's like, well, what lights you up right now when you're feeling in that kind of low mood and having those thoughts? What's going to take you away from the thinking? And do that, because for me, that's what it's like. Whatever lights us up drops us back into wisdom immediately. And you know, if you think about like a time when you're really engrossed in something that you love doing, although that the good feeling isn't actually coming from that external thing, it's still coming from you. It's just because your mind is settled. And so that's often a good thing that I like. I like about what you just said there. It's like, what can we do that lights us up and reconnects us to that? And I think really for me, it was just really knowing that there isn't anything to do, and it will eventually return to, we will get back to wisdom. That was kind of freeing for me, because I'd spent so long kind of trying to force it, like with with the cork. And for me, it offered a sense of relief, because I think what I had started to do was I'd get anxious, think I needed to fix it, and it would just add more and more thinking on, and eventually I'd just be up here with thinking, and that makes it more difficult almost to get back to wisdom, because you're just adding more and more and more on, like you're saying. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Listen to that thought, that affirmation, or what Nicole just described when she says, "This is, I'm going to get back to where." I don't know exactly how you said it, but it was such an optimistic like expectancy, as far as she'll get back to where, like that optimism. That's such a peaceful like vibration, like frequency. So just in that one thought, if we can have the awareness to be able to remind ourselves that, just like everything else, this will work out as well. Everything is working out for me is an affirmation that I love to remind myself. Like I don't know how this is going to work out, like what it's going to look like, the details, but everything has worked out in the past. I'm still alive and breathing. Like it's going to be okay. Even that starts to move us into, you know, optimism and positive expectancy, and moves our frequency back up to where, you know, we can be at peace, as long as, again, if we just stay off of that. For me, it's like if I'm thinking about any subject on the planet, it doesn't matter what it is, if I can't find something about it, because for me it's just momentum. Like I don't allow myself to have like one thought, two thought, three thoughts, and I'm thinking about something for 20 minutes or an hour. Like sometimes we think about things as human beings for like a whole day, and it's just like made us miserable all day because we're just thinking about this subject that we're anxious about, and we've all done it. So when you have this awareness that Nicole's describing, and you don't have to let things like take a hold of you, where the momentum makes it really, really difficult to stop if you're, you know, if you've let it go too far, you know. So you can just be aware of this and realize, yeah, there is nothing that you have to do. You know, just if you can't find something to appreciate about that subject, because there's always something typically to appreciate about it, even if it's just, this is a life experience that has taught me lessons, and now I know I want this direction in my life. We can at least do that. then we don't have to let it drive us all the way down to like powerless and depressed. If we can't do that, sometimes we can't. Think of any other subject on the planet that's not as charged emotionally. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, think about like butterflies and flowers, like flying through rainbows. Like, watch a funny
I
YouTube
love the
video,
idea,
anything.
yeah. I love
Yeah,
the idea of kind of staying curious and just kind of exploring life. It's
yeah,
like there's so much to be seen, and we have 80,000 thoughts a day. So at some point, a new one's going to pop in that we
absolutely.
don't attach ourselves to. And I think the other thing that helped me, I remember somebody saying to me once, is like, we don't tell our hearts to beat and we don't tell our lungs how to breathe. And it's the same for our mind. Like there's an inbuilt psychology that is constantly doing that for us. It's taking us back to that settled space. And we don't trust that, I think, in society these days. It's like we think we have to get in there and force and fix and change what's going on. But actually when we do leave it alone, it has the same wisdom. It's like imagine if we were God, like trying to manage our heartbeat and be like, right, now we need to pump, quick. It's like, it just makes you laugh because you're like that. We would never think to do that. But
For sure.
in psychology, we've kind of been conditioned that that's how it should be. But we will eventually return to a place of wisdom. That's what our mind's always looking to do for us.
Absolutely. I'm what I love most about what you're sharing, Nicole, and like what you're doing for anyone that is attracted to work with you is you're helping people become aware of that, which gives so much peace. Like that awareness that Nicole just described, that we will return to a place of wisdom and we don't have to like force it or be worried that, we're broken or like every other human on the planet can have this wisdom, but we don't. It's not true. So if we can be aware of that, then yeah, life doesn't have to be such a struggle and a challenge and like a strain and a stress. Like it could be ease. And what's cool about being at peace and calm and ease is momentum can carry us into frequencies that are freaking awesome. And you can be having the time of your
Yeah.
life. Like you can go from peace and ease to like happy, joyful bliss quick. Like it's just momentum can carry us fast. And so, and that could come in the form of just a thought that's just awesome that, you have a vision for how you want your life to look. And all of a sudden you have a really good idea that you're like, ooh, it's a really good idea. Now you have an excitement. Now you have a passion. And that's just a
Yeah.
really awesome energy for any of us to be in. So
That is cool. And it comes from from getting back to the wisdom, because when we're in that clear mind, there's so much clarity. When we're dropped out of our heads and back into what lights us up, when we operate from there, we have the capacity to then use this power of thought to create whatever we want. And that has a really nice feeling about it. You kind of know when you're in that frequency. It's like, yeah, amazing.
absolutely. That's literally the only thing that matters to me in life is that's my present moment frequency. If I'm aware that I'm not, I don't make myself wrong for it because that just feels worse. But my only intention in life is to let myself go back to peace so I can be connected again. I don't care about anything else. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really think about anything else other than like what's my present moment vibration. And it's a practice. So as the more you practice this, it's not like I have to ask myself a million times a day. I really don't ask myself that question anymore. I'm just hyper aware of what it is, like what the vibe is, and you can feel it. Like thank goodness for like the actual like feelings that we can actually feel to be indicators. So I love it.
Yeah,
This conversation.
there's a beautiful feeling to kind of wisdom, or yeah, just being in that state of flow, I think. And you kind of know when you're in it, which is nice. um,
Absolutely,
but I
absolutely.
think I think this understanding kind of offers that freedom, that there's also nothing wrong with us being human. Because if we were constantly, I don't know, if we never suffered in our lives, then that would be a little bit weird as well.
Yeah, it
But it's
we
seeing that if we leave that alone, it will pass on through quicker.
absolutely. Yeah, if everything was rainbows, butterflies, and like sunshine, we wouldn't appreciate it at all. And we'd be probably bored of this human experience. We think we want everything to go perfectly, and we want to like think about something that we want, and then boom, it's already here. Like we'd be so bored here if there was like no process, like nothing that
Yeah.
we. So no, definitely. I've come to terms with the whole flow of life. And for me, I mean, there's even times where, I mean, I could think of a few times in the last few years where the momentum was really heavy and like I needed some rest, and that's okay. So I could be like, I just need to chill tonight. Like I don't need to be out
Yeah.
to the world. Like I just want to relax, and that's cool too.
Yeah, and that's what I learned with my chronic fatigue. Was it was like my body was just saying, actually, it's time to rest now. Like
Absolutely.
there's a wisdom even in the kind of the chronic fatigue illness was just teaching me that it's time to stop and kind of listen more deeply to what the truth is, in a way. So we
Absolutely.
go through these suffering episodes, or whatever you want to call them, these experiences of suffering, and there's always kind of some form of wisdom in them. It's like my body had its own wisdom that it needed to just slow down. So yeah, I think that's quite powerful as well. It's like we see them in one way. When, you know, when I was going through having my illness, it seemed like the end of the world, and I could have kind of gone down that rabbit hole. But actually, when I was out the other side of it, I saw that, you know, this was actually something that taught me a huge lesson and allowed me to more deeply listen to myself. So we think
Absolutely.
we think it's bad, but it's so we're always where we need to be, I guess.
Always, always. How old were you when you discovered this, Nicole?
Well, probably about, oh gosh, about 5 years ago. So yeah, late 20s.
Okay. Awesome. I mean, for any of us,
But
it's awesome.
I kind of been exploring it for, you know, the last 10 years, really. But yeah.
For any of us, anytime we get to the point where we could be aware, like Nicole is aware of all this, like I'm so happy for everybody listening to this episode, because you are already been attracted to, having these awarenesses, and this is all we talk about on this show. So if this is not your first episode, this is definitely not your first rodeo, but it's awesome because Nicole's lived such a different life experience than all the rest of us. And so have all of us out there. That is awesome to hear these experiences from just different expressions of this non-physical energy that we've been talking about the whole time. So this wisdom, this intelligence that we've been talking about the whole time. So
Yeah.
this has been such a fun conversation so far. Nicole, I have a question for you. So 2020 right now, we're already, my goodness, midway through February. What are you excited about this year? What's going on in Nicole's world? What are you excited about?
Yeah, lots actually. This year has been so awesome. It's been really, really kind to me, which is fun. So at the moment, I've been creating a self-rediscovery summit, which is to help people kind of get back to the wisdom and make sense of it. So a bit like this, there's been kind of some beautiful conversations that help just point people home and home to their wisdom. So that's been really fun. I've been creating that, and then I have been working with kind of people one-to-one, which is always nice because it helps people kind of dive into this more, kind of looking at the issues that they're particularly struggling with, and it makes sense of it for them. So work-wise, that's what I've been doing, but there's loads of stuff going on. It's been really, just come back from a holiday in the Maldives, which was particularly
Nice.
nice.
Awesome.
So I'm feeling kind of very in flow at the moment, which is nice.
That's definitely one of my, so I have like I feel like I have like a rankings of like where I want to go on the planet. There's just like awareness of different places, not like a specific like 1, 2, 3, 4, but I have a good idea. That's definitely on the list of places. That's a beautiful, beautiful place. That's your first time there, or is that like a normal spot?
No, I have been before, but usually I go to different places because I love exploring the world and
Yeah.
different places. So, but yeah, it's a pretty special place. So I just went back there, and it was nice. Yeah, it was nice to just. And it was funny actually because I was sitting on my balcony, and I had been writing a post about feeling in flow and how we're always in flow. It's just we can't see it, and about kind of the forcing and not having to force things, and it, you know, life just guiding us through. And I had been on a boat trip the day before to see if I could see dolphins, and of course for 2 hours on this boat I didn't see a single dolphin. But as I was sat there on my balcony writing about flow, a whole load of dolphins just swam past. So
Of course.
that was pretty special as well.
I love it when she just released the dolphins, and the dolphins like, oh, let's swim past
Yeah.
her, like, so I
Which
love
is
it.
just a nice lesson, because I was like, yeah, we definitely can't force this. It's like just allow it to unfold. And I think that's the other thing, is that we can learn so much from nature. For me, nature gives us so many lessons. It's like we look at the trees, and we can see really that is just the natural intelligence of life just operating. Like the trees are just growing, and here obviously we have seasons, so the leaves are falling off in autumn, and what I always like to point to is the fact that the trees don't kind of sit there going, oh my God, how am I going to grow my leaves back? Like, what am I going to do about that? It's like, it's just flowing. It knows they're going to grow back. And there's this wisdom that's guiding it through life. And it's just because the tree hasn't got the power of thought that we have to keep ourselves in this kind of, like you say, this frequency of fear and anxiety. So I think there's so many lessons in nature, and I love the dolphins. It's
Absolutely.
a good one.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Awesome example. I love it. And when you're in, obviously we know what frequency Nicole was in when she was writing about flow. Her intention was like, one, she was feeling really good because she's a writer. She enjoys writing. So that already has her frequency good. And she's writing about a subject and knowing that she's going to share it to empower her audience. So now her frequency is just rising as she's just like channeling this information and just frequency rising. And the dolphins are like, here's this like a high vibe human over here, like, because the dolphins feel your energy for sure. And then the intelligence that is, that we've been talking about this whole time, just nudges the dolphin, go swim over this way, by this awesome. So it all plays, like we're all co-creating with the dolphins and everybody else. So
yeah, and you just reminded me as well, I'm also writing a book because I forgot I was a writer for a moment. But yeah, so I'm writing a book all about this, which is really exciting as well. So that's another thing that I'm creating.
You know what you're going to title it yet?
No, I don't know actually.
It'll flow
I'm
perfect.
kind of toying with it. It hasn't quite landed yet, so I'm just waiting for that to arrive.
I love it.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome. The whole book is awesome. I already see it and can feel it from your conversation here. The title will reflect that. So I love it. I love it. Definitely, you guys connect with Nicole. So I have one more question for you, Nicole. But you guys connect with Nicole like on social media, so you can see everything that she is, flowing into the world. And I love once I know that a human exists, Nicole, because we didn't even know each other existed like a few weeks ago. And so like for me now, it's awesome because I know everything that you choose to put your attention on and your energy, the awesome energy that you brought to this conversation and the awareness that you brought to this conversation. It's going to go into whatever it is that you choose to do while you're here. And we can expect that, like we'll be able to feel that while, reading Nicole's words or, seeing anything that she chooses to do in this life. And that goes for all of you guys. Like, it's just awesome for any of us to be aware of each other because, we're all connected. And it's just, again, another example of an awesome expression of, this intelligence that we've been talking about. Also, I love that you just gave me two more words when I'm flowing out all the different examples. Wisdom and intelligence will now go into my flow. I didn't say the force today. I had a guest a few weeks ago that was like, Jedi, like super into it. So he called it the force, which I loved. So
well, I'll take that one into my repertoire. Yeah.
So you've been doing this the whole time, and a question that I have for you, and I just want to hear what flows out of you. Could be anything, but I love that the internet, as far as we know, is going to live like through our lifetimes for sure, but probably forever. And someone could be attracted to this episode right when it's released or 50 years from now. So whenever that is, I would love to know what you would want to share with them that, whenever they hear this would make an impact on their lives. And you've been doing it the whole time. It could be anything.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I want people to hear is that they're not broken and they don't need fixing. I think that was my biggest lesson, and it's what I work with people to help them see and to make sense of the fact that there's nothing wrong with them. We all have all the answers, all the wisdom, all the natural intelligence within us already, and it's just kind of seeing that really. And so if anyone's feeling stuck with anything, just know that there is a freedom there, and they're not broken. That's really the main thing.
I love that. I'm so happy you brought the conversation back to that. And for one of the few times in podcast history, I'm not going to even elaborate on that. I'm going to let that be what it is, because that's Nicole beautifully shared that the whole episode and are an example of it, a reflection of it. And that's, really how you're impacting people more than any other way. And that's for all of us. Like really the best way for us to help another human being or help the collective is just to be it, like to have that be how we're living. And you'll be able to inspire and impact and uplift anyone that, puts their attention on you, because you're at that moment, you're being this intelligence, you're being this wisdom, and that can only uplift, humanity as a whole and anybody that's in your circle or, that's attracted to want to participate in anything you're doing or spend time with you. It's all a benefit. We're all helping each other. So I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been an awesome episode. I really appreciate you for coming on and sharing your love and light, so much of it. You're an awesome human. Happy to know you now.
Well, the universe brought us here to have this conversation. So, yeah.
A conversation I for sure would have wanted to have with you anyway. And I joke now I've become a recording snob and I want to record everything and share it. So I'm just happy that we were able to do that so that others can be impacted by it as well. We definitely appreciate you and your time. And you guys out there, definitely share this episode. This will greatly impact anyone that is attracted to it and inspired to listen to it or watch it. And definitely rate and review the podcast and subscribe if you're not already, so that it makes it easier for people to find these episodes. And I'll keep having awesome conversations with amazing humans like Nicole, and just appreciate you, Nicole. And we're sending love and light to all of you guys out there and positive vibes. And I was saying Happy New Year for the longest time, and I kind of stopped saying it. I didn't want to stop. I told people I was going to say it in June. I'm going to say it again right now. Just happy, just moments of life. You know, it could be happy in any moment.
Yeah, why do we save it for January?
I was saying it literally all of January. Like I was like, if there's no cutoff date on like the 2nd or 3rd or 4th, so can I just still say it on the 5th? Can I still say it on the 6th?
Yeah, why not?
So, well, you guys definitely enjoy your day whenever you're hearing this, either right when this is releasing or 50 years from now. Look me up. I'll still be here thriving, and so will Nicole. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Awesome.
Thank you.
That was fun, Nicole.
It was.